Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Tiffany.
To some, we could be called career wizards.
And to others, sometimes we seem like therapists. However, we definitely are not.
But for you, we are the co hosts of the Career Boosters podcast.
So if you have an expertise in an area, chances are that expertise can be leveraged into the department or the ministry. So for instance, if you have a background in technology, there's a technology and innovation ministry.
Hello and welcome to the Career Boosters podcast, episode 12 of season 2.
Or
That's
maybe it goes
insane.
this way.
I
I don't
don't
know.
know, something like that. We'll figure it out. It is the start of reading week for MBA students, and so it's our time to add a little different flair, a different perspective to the experience of the podcast today. I'm not sure how common it is to have a podcast and have your previous leader or previous boss on the show, but here we are. We're doing it. Cori Fodeg, former director of the career programming department and of the MBA program, to chat all things public service, public sector work, and of course, coaching. Cori always fostered genuine connections with others, and her amazing spirit and personality came into her team so much. And when we think about cheerleaders and great coaches, one person that comes to mind for me is Cori. So we reached out and said, want to join us on the podcast? And so, Cori, thank you so much for joining us. And the first question that we're going to fire at you, if you can tell us a little bit about your career story and how you've gotten to where you're at now in your career.
Yeah, so serendipity plays a role in this for sure. I think I want to talk about the moments in my life where really I pivoted different directions. And so one of the moments that I realized that I wasn't an occupational therapist material and I went into psychology instead was one of those moments. So sometimes when a door closes, there's other ones that open up, and they're actually the right doors to be walking through, which I think is fantastic. And then I think one of the things that really impacted me is I was working in a group home with kids off the street. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. We need to talk to the parents, and maybe there's some education that we can do around that and supporting them and supporting their kids. And that's when I got into education, which was a huge, uh, great way to start my career in learning and education. And that's always been a passion of mine since then. So I started at Grant McEwen, worked there in employment programming. Then I moved to the U of A, and I worked in the Faculty of Engineering and co-op. And then I came to you folks. And then there was a little bit of shuffling, and an opportunity opened up at the government working in their corporate program service delivery area. And I have been there ever since. And new twist, I'm starting a new position at NAIT in their experiential area. I'll be managing all of that. And I'm very, very excited about that because I've always been passionate about applied learning. So learning isn't really learning until you can actually do something with it. So I'm super excited about that new transition.
Oh, I love all the pivots that you just talked about. Pivots are the new norm. That it isn't, if you're going to pivot, it's when and how many times. And so to hear you kind of beautifully articulate that when one door closes, another right door opens, I really like that nuance. I've had some of my own pivots that I've shared here as well, but you've talked about a pivot within, I think, a sector that so many of our students are interested in, and that's the public sector. And you've kind of hit it at a few different places, but why there? Why the public sector? What kind of brought you there? But what has maybe more kept you there for so long?
Mm-hmm. I think the public sector, they're really looking for talented people to help influence and change the world. And so one of the ways we do that is through education. And I really believe that is a vehicle of helping people become all that they can be. I'm very much into growth, and I do believe in helping people get to where they want to be. Usually the satisfaction comes from not being in the right place. That's been my philosophy from a leadership and management perspective. And so helping people get to those places is my role as a leader. That's what I believe. And it was really interesting to work in the government for a while because I think that if you want to have impact on society as a whole, government is where you do it. That's where policies are built. That's where decisions are made about how we're going to be as Albertans, as Canadians, as in the world. And I think that they just need the best and brilliant minds that are out there to provide, we call it in the public service, fearless advice and loyally implement. We want to fearlessly advise people, and we want to loyally implement what the direction is that the leaders want. So I think that's, and the other thing that I really love about the sector is it can change. It can change, and there's new inputs, and there's new ways of doing things, and they're really looking for innovative, creative people to build a better tomorrow. So I'm a big fan of the public service in education as well as the government.
That's so cool, Cori. And I think when we think about the, let's call them like the really flashy jobs, the ones that make us all be like, ooh, wow. You think of investment banking, you think of in the world of MBA students, you think of the world of consulting. You definitely have had your fair share of students come into your office and be like, I'm going to go work for McKinsey. So, but when you think about the highlights of your public sector experience, what do you think those are? What really stood out to you in your public sector experience? And maybe if you can, after you answer that, kind of talk about the biggest challenges that maybe you faced.
It's kind of strange. I was thinking about like what the highlights are. There's been lots of little highlights and little things along the way that I was in love with. But I think that two of the highlights that stand out for me that were pretty pivotal in shaping me as a leader was the Fort McMurray forest fires and COVID, because both of those were events out of our control, and both of them put us in a place of I really, at the time it was pretty stressful. I'm not going to kid you, but it it opened up people's thinking because nobody had the answer. We just had to get it done. We needed to make decisions. We needed to be innovative and creative to figure out what the problem was that we were solving. And that to me was, I was at my best. I really was. I knew what to do in those crises, and I knew how to lead. And it's funny because when I reflect on it, I think a word that I would use to describe myself is pioneer. I'm okay going into places where there isn't any answers and there is a challenge and moving forward. So to me, those were the highlights. And I mean, working with the amazing people that I've worked with, I just cannot say enough great things about the people that were on my team, my colleagues, bosses that I've had. They've been fantastic. So I think that those were the highlights. I think one of the challenges that I've struggled with is everywhere I've gone, there's always been cutbacks. And so doing less with more, I hate that phrase. I just hate that phrase. Like, resource properly, determine your priorities, and don't do the fluff,
Yeah.
right? Being
Yeah.
very focused, laser focused on what you want to achieve. I have a saying, it's like, are you a leader if you don't say no? And that's just kind of a rhetorical question that I throw out there every once in a while, because I think sometimes it's really hard to say no because we want deliverables, we want, stock prices to go up, whatever it is. But I think in order to be successful, you have to be laser focused on what you really need to achieve.
You and I worked together in a time of massive change in the post-secondary world, the post-secondary environment. And you see that like fearless leadership that you talked about, but also the willingness to be flexible and adaptable and tell me a little bit about what that was like going through. We have so much programming. You and I are big, like we are people that do stuff, like we get stuff done. I almost swore that would have been the first time on this podcast, but we get stuff done. What was that like, and what has that been like going through kind of that fearless kind of change and that fearless environment to just try and be as successful as possible?
Like during COVID, you're
Yeah,
asking about?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that early on in any kind of a crisis, you have to determine where you want to be. Like, what's our end goal? And so when it was Fort McMurray fires, it was get everybody to safety. That was our first goal. So how do we do that? What do we need? What needs to happen really quickly? COVID, it was the same thing. We knew that the world was closing down. And so we had all these classes where people would show up in person. I think that like we pivoted like crazy, didn't we? Like that was insane. And so, I think that people work really, really hard if there's a focus and a direction. Like we knew. And then sometimes you just got to make executive decisions. Like we don't know, we don't have enough information, we're not sure. Okay, you know what? We can't dither anymore. We have to actually move forward and make a decision. And if it's the wrong decision, that's okay. We can go back and fix it, but we have to make a decision. And so some of those things, like, I don't know if you remember, Paul, but it was like, no, we're going to go blended learning, and this is how it's going to happen. Right? We didn't have
Yeah.
100% of the
No.
information we needed. We had about 70.
Yeah.
But we had to make a decision because the topple or domino effect of not making that decision
Yeah.
would really have impacted us a lot, right?
And
So
flexibility and the ability to just adapt, like in a moment that nobody knows how to adapt, right? So yeah.
right. And you know, and that was, I mean, okay, this is a very strange thing, but that was the crazy thing. Innovation and creativity, nobody knew. So anything really, as long as we were kind of looking after our student, looking after our people, we would be okay, right?
I heard a saying recently that it's not about making the right decision because we often don't know what the right and wrong decisions are. It's about making decisions in the right way. Like how you make the decision and how you implement it. Getting hung up on just making the right one is paralyzing. I'm not entirely sure there always is a right one. Okay, there probably are, but generally speaking. I want to go back to a word that you used, Cori, because to me it connects with a bit of a stereotype that I think people have in general public service, but students for sure when they're trying to figure out, do I go into public service, do I not? And the word you used is impact. And I think you talked about impact, especially from a systems and a policy and community perspective. But the flip side of that, or the stereotype often is that it's hard to make an impact because there's red tape and process and multi-layers of approval. And can you talk a little bit about working within that stereotype and perhaps how you've managed that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are processes in place. There's this great thing in the government system called briefing notes, and everyone's like, "Oh, I got to write another briefing note." And so what it is it's briefing senior leadership about a situation that maybe they've asked a question about. And I actually really enjoyed doing that because I felt that I was sitting in front of the leader saying, "Here's the information that you need to know. Here's what's gonna help you make a really good decision." Right? So I think that the stereotype, yeah, it does take a long time. And yes, politics does influence that situation. So you might advise and you might have this great briefing note or briefing notes. But if the political direction changes, sometimes you know, it's shelved. But that's okay. I mean, you have to be resilient and you have to be agile and adaptable and understand that it's a political environment. And so you have to be aware of kind of one of the key things that we talk about in the government is political acumen. Understanding your environment that you're working in, who you're talking to, what are the influences, what are the pressures that they have. And it's really an exercise in influence. How do you influence people? Are they just going to take your word for it? No. So you have to be able to use that really strong skill of influence to help you understand what their political pressures are and language and package things in a way that will be palatable for the people who are reading it.
So can we then transition that to you worked with MBA students certainly for a time and you've worked in these environments and seen the skill sets that are needed. Can you connect those two together? And you just listed a bunch: resilience, agility, adaptability, influence, political acumen. These are all skill sets that are really helpful within the sort of the public sector. But from MBA students specifically coming into this, what is it that they should be looking for innately, maybe within themselves, and what should they be growing, perhaps, if they're wanting to spend some time in public sector?
Well, the great thing about the public sector is there's 28,000 people who work for it. And there's like, I think it's 26 departments. So if you have an expertise in an area, chances are that expertise can be leveraged into the department or the ministry. So for instance, if you have a background in technology, there's a technology and innovation ministry. And so they would love to have that expertise there where you can apply that, what you know, in that particular world. The other beautiful thing, it's like you're a consultant, but you're working for the government, so you're not McKinsey, but you're working for the government as a consultant because we want your expertise to be used in that space so that you can advise people, right? Advise your leaders.
Yeah.
So Think about what your expertise is first,
Yeah.
I would say, is the
Mhm.
first step. Secondly, research skills are really, really important if you're thinking about policy but there's other roles to play in the government besides policy. So, I mean,
Mhm.
it's only limited by your imagination about what you can do within the
Yeah.
government. Seriously, it is.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that writing skills are really important as well, and just a commitment to serving Albertans.
Yeah.
I think it's an attitude that you
Yeah.
have, right? Being of service.
Yeah. So it's so wonderful how you put all of that. It's you take it, I loved how you talked about you're being a consultant for the government. I think too many times MBA students, and we've all now worked with MBA students, I think there's this consulting is the flashy thing. It's the I get to jet set around the world and solve businesses problems. Well, how about locally here, right? Like we face our own challenges and things like that as well. And using your expertise, but then combining that with the MBA, it's such a wonderful way to leverage about being in service of other people. And the three of us have constantly been in service of other people. And so it makes so much sense. So glad to hear it from somebody else, not just us as well, Cori. Thank you. So you made this leap from your Alberta School of Business role to coaching and then into the public sector. Um, what was that like kind of making and going through transition, but then coming out the other side, being, in charge of coaching, in charge of the this monumental work within the public sector at the GOA?
It was very different.
Yeah,
Post-secondary is different than the public sector for sure. Um, I think what I loved about the government is so I ran the leadership programming as well as managed all the coaches, etc. And what was really inspirational is to hear from leaders. Like we coached a lot of leaders across the GOA. And I always used to say leadership is lonely business. And so if you are a coach, you get to actually walk with that person as they like they struggle with some of those questions about themselves, about their direct reports, like the political space that they're in. And I think it's a real privilege to walk people through that and listen to what their thought processes are and help them get clarity on the direction that they want to go and the things that they need to do. And the other thing that I can say about leaderships is that they're super busy. So when you give them an hour of your time, it's a moment, like I would say people were coming in hot, right? Because they would have just finished like a very serious, lots of decision making, and then they come to coaching. And it's a little oasis for them and for their brain to kind of go, okay, you're safe now. Let's just unpack all of that stuff. Let's figure out how we're going to move ahead. And so I think I can't say enough great things about being a coach and about having the privilege to share people's space and for them to share. So I've really, really enjoyed it. And I also really liked just thinking about programming that would support and develop leaders in the GOA. I think that was a really fun space to be in. So, yeah.
I'm curious to hear, let's go back to the similar highlights and challenges just of being a coach. What is it that you love the best about coaching? And you've done it in a few different places, but what do you also find challenging about coaching?
Challenging about coaching. I don't know if I actually really think there's anything challenging about coaching, to be honest. Like, I think that you have to put aside your own agenda. So I find sometimes people have a struggle with that. So really being clear before you, yeah, engage somebody that this is your story. I'm here to support your story. I'm not here to support my story. So kind of your biases and, oh, I can give you some advice. In this situation, this is what I would do, or this is what I've done. You really have to make sure that you're clean and that you park that stuff because it's all about them. It's not about you. And so I don't know if that's a challenge, but
yeah.
that's something that I'm mindful of pretty
I think
regularly.
Yeah, I think the three of us being ICF certified coaches, we've gone through this. I would call it for myself like a transformation of really just being in a moment with a person and just really just speaking and asking questions in a way that will help them move forward, right? Like, so we think that that's the art of coaching. For me, it's the when do I switch my hat, right? Like, when do I put on my advice hat and when do I take it off and how long do I keep it off for, right? Things like that. And I agree, Corey. I think that it's I actually don't find many challenges with coaching either. The only thing, sometimes we don't have enough time, and that may be the only thing that I wish I had more of is that there were more time to sit with somebody because you kind of can feel this transformation happening, right? And it's really beautiful. So I had the experience of working with you as a part of your team, and I know that team culture is really important to you in the teams that you run. You always encourage kind of a really positive culture. What makes that an important focus for you, and what strategies did you use as a leader?
Well, I'm nothing without my people. I'm like, right? Like, so it's always comes back to the people. And I think that it's about knowing who they are. And I'm not just saying, oh, yeah, your skill set is X, Y, and Z, but it's knowing about who you are as a whole person. So your family, your situation, things you struggle with, um, where you want to go. Oh my gosh. If people just took a moment and figured out where their staff wants to go and then help them get there, that is 90% of the job. Like, seriously, because I think when staff feel supported and encouraged and, there's opportunities that are made for them to move ahead. I was just recently asked about like, what's your leadership style? I'm like, oh man, I could list like I'm a servant leadership. Yeah. I said, you know what? Ask my former staff because they would know what kind of leader I am more so than me just sitting here and telling you what I am. So I think that it's always been a major focus for me. And so taking time to get to know people, have some laughs about some things, have some cries about some things. I mean, I think in my office, it was like the tissue, right? But it's great. I want all of it. I want all of it. I want people on perfect days and I want people when they're struggling. It doesn't matter because then that helps me as a leader kind of go, okay, you know what? We need to give John a break today. Like he's been up till 3 a.m. with a sick kid and whatever. It just helps me become a better leader. So that's my focus. It's always been people because you can't get
Can
anything without them.
So true. So true. Can we put the advice hat on just for a second when Paul talked about coaching hats and advice hat? I'm wondering if you can put yours on, specifically speaking to students who are interested in public sector or even post-secondary sector. And let's continue this culture question or train of thought because it's something that students are often interested in or concerned about, but they don't quite know how to ask about it. And, we talk about, simply in an interview saying, what's your corporate culture like? That's probably one of the most ineffective questions, or at least the way of asking it. So for students, which should hopefully be all of them, that are interested in truly understanding culture and finding the right cultural fit, what's your advice to them?
Network.
Yay,
That's my
another
advice
check
to
for
you.
networking.
Yeah, you can say things in an interview like, "What is your culture?" But it's like me saying, "I'm a XYZ leader." Really? Are you? I don't know. Where's your proof? So I think that networking is key. So if you're really interested in an area, and I know people are like, oh, networking, whatever. But you know what? Having a friendly chat over coffee about what people's experiences are in the areas that they work is networking. Bumping into somebody about, at a MBA mixer and talking about, oh, you work for XYZ. How is that there? That's networking. Just
Yeah,
gathering information about
yeah.
what the culture is like and how people are experiencing it. I mean, you can ask questions in an interview that sound something like, so, of the people that have worked for you, what would they say about you? What would they say about your leadership style? What would they say about the organization? But like I said, everybody's on their best behavior in an interview.
Yeah.
So you don't always get the real story. So I network, sorry,
Mhm. Yeah.
can't say anything else.
You don't need to apologize for networking. We try to broach that early on, as you know, in orientation. We talk a little bit about it, but we look at it as relationship building. And I'm going to even add on the knowledge, right? You're gaining knowledge and power when it comes to the understanding of the organization that you're potentially interested in. And if you just ask a few questions, you never know what you might find out about a company's corporate culture or things like that. So Cori,
I
we've
just
taught. Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Can I just say something else about that?
yeah, for
So
sure.
here's the thing about from the company's perspective. We want fit.
Yeah,
We want fit.
yeah,
So we're actually, you might be somebody who's really focused on, I don't know, whatever, um, science, I don't know,
hmm
whatever it is.
hmm
But our culture is arts,
hmm
right? So you have to think about it that way as well,
yeah,
like that they're looking and assessing fit. Maybe
yeah,
you really want to work somewhere that's fast paced, but they're actually more methodical in their approach.
yeah,
And
hmm
it's not that you're not the successful person or the most
yeah,
important person. It's just that the fit isn't there. So
yeah,
that's when we talk about culture, we're talking about am I the person that fits within that culture,
yeah.
or do I belong somewhere else?
And you need to do the research to figure that out beforehand, right? Because why waste your time in an interview if you're looking for the fast-paced, jet-setting environment of like something like McKinsey or BCG or KPMG, and then you end up in the government, which is a little bit slower paced when it comes to how things turn around and the way that things are action, right? Because it has so many more layers of depth to it. So, great, yeah, it's really that makes a ton of sense. Cori, what before Tiffany heads into the lightning round? What is next for Cori when it comes to career and what it means to make a difference to more and more people in this service-oriented lifestyle you have?
Well, I'm pretty excited to be starting at NAIT. I gotta tell you, it's totally a combination of everything that I've worked for at this point. It's a new position, so I get to make it my own, which is super exciting. And so I think I'm going to be all things experiential learning. And that's just, like I said, it's a passion of mine. It's total alignment with who I am as a person. I'm really excited to be joining a talented group of individuals. And I have to say, like, it was hard to leave the government. I love those people. And so it was kind of more of I had to do this really introspectively and like, what do you want? Because I'm kind of at the tail end of my career. Well, I say that. I don't know. I could be like 92 still teaching, who knows? But yeah, like so I really had to it was hard for me to leave the government because I truly, truly loved the people there and the work, but I think this is a great opportunity for me. So I had to be a little selfish and kind of go, it's my turn. I'm up. So
And I love the demonstration that fully aligned choices doesn't make them an easy choice.
no,
Uh-uh.
it doesn't. There were tears. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we somehow think the opposite. I'm going to find the most aligned option ever, and it's going to be the easiest door to walk through, and that's a load of crap sometimes.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? I think that one thing to keep in mind is like the tears are about you really have to love something,
Hmm.
right? To be sad about leaving it.
Hmm. There's so many good one-liners that you have offered us, and that's another one of them. Thank you.
Yeah,
And I think we could get more one-liners, but I think we're ready for a lightning round. Are you ready, Cori?
you bet.
Awesome. Three quick questions, three gut answers.
Okay.
What is it that has given you the biggest boost in your career so far?
Leaders who believed in me and let me do my thing.
Hmm. What do you wish you had learned sooner?
That everybody's just trying to figure it out, including leaders.
Mhm. All right. And service is so important to Paul and I. So we are always curious to hear how service is going to show up for you in the coming week.
I'm taking my daughter shopping.
Oh, I like that service. Anytime you can link service to shopping, I'm there.
I'm not a shopper, so there you go.
It is big service.
I'm
Okay,
going
fair.
above and beyond.
You sure are. Okay, Paul, what's Paul's random question?
I have been thinking about this for 39 minutes so far, and the one that I came up with, Cori, I think when we talked about culture, when we talked about fit and belonging, the thing that I remember most about Cori is coming in with these little treat bags at every holiday. There's little like at Halloween, here's a few candies and a nice note and things like that. What is the next craft that is on Cori's radar that you are going to implement in the next little bit, next couple of months?
I'm making an advent calendar. So
Very
there
cool.
you go. Yeah.
Very
So what
cool.
we do is there's a group of us. We get a number and we make 25 of those things, whatever they are, and then we mix them up and see adults want to have fun too, man.
Hmm.
Right?
It's true.
We want to have
It's
fun.
true.
We want treat bags too.
Yeah, we do want treat
So
bags. Yeah.
we like little presents. I think it's good. That's my next craft.
How do I get on this list to make
Talk to me after the
adult?
show.
Excellent. I'm there. I'm on it. Cori, you are yet another example of Paul's networking skill set. I know, right? Paul hates it when I puff him up. In at least in my world. And so Paul has offered lots of information about all the amazing people that he knows, and you are one of them. And you and I have never met before 41 minutes ago now. But in 41 minutes, everything that Paul has said and more have come across. And so I am really appreciative of your willingness to continue to serve in this educational space of helping give other people tools and information and knowledge to best serve their career. You used a word to describe yourself, and in the 41 minutes of that I know you, seems very true, which is pioneer. And what you've talked about being drawn to it, and your most next adventure in NAIT being the ability to pioneer and your ability to thrive and lead within crisis and create culture. And so I'm a little disappointed that I don't have perhaps the same experience Paul does in having worked with you. I wish you all the very best in your new lucky team. And as you continue to grieve the process of leaving a team that you loved, because I think that's a big part of it. So we wish you all the very best in that. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, key takeaways. And mine was early on in the conversation with a little bit of a nuanced twist on, I think, probably a common saying, but she mentioned that when one door closes, another right door opens. And I think we get so focused on the doors that are slamming in front of us, or maybe the fact that we actually can't even see the next door, but to keep in mind and to trust the process, the sign that's right behind Paul right now that we talk about so often. Trust the process that when one door closes, there is another right door for you, but it's up to you to go find it, to maybe knock on it and to walk through it. But I really liked that nuanced sort of difference there. That was powerful for me. Paul?
I think for me, Cori just was a pure pleasure and a joy to work with. And for me, I'm going to make a statement of the small things matter, and the small things matter to corporate culture and to culture in general. Fondly remember a little treat bag coming in from Cori on Halloween or at Christmas time, a really beautiful card that you can tell has been made by hand. And it's these small little gestures that just mean so much. It could be a thank you at the end of a class that you're in to the professor. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. It could be working with a teammate and providing them with a little kudos on LinkedIn, or it could just simply be checking in with somebody that you haven't heard of for a little while. It's just the small things really matter to people, and I think it just helps build great relationships, which guess what? That's networking.
And we're back to networking. We always seem to end up there, a relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. That's another episode under our belts. Next week is emotional intelligence. So we'll catch you then. See ya. Thanks for tuning in to the Career Boosters podcast. We hope you had a blast. Yeah, we know that's corny. Catch you next time, and remember to subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts.